to Dragons on the Wall, IGN's weekly Game of Thrones show where we break down all the latest and greatest in Westeros. And lucky for us, Season 8 has finally arrived. And of course, we've all just watched the premiere. So it goes without saying, but if you haven't watched it yet, leave, come back when you have. We are going full spoilers. Which, speaking of which, I should say, I am Terry Schwartz. I'm your host here, and I am fired up, just like Ned Umber, about this new season.
No. It's not good.
Yeah,
Shame on you.
I'm really proud of that one.
No.
I'll allow it.
No.
Thank you.
I'm Laura Prudhomme, and like Bran, I'm trying to green sea my way through this season.
Laura was so excited about coming up with that one. You
one.
can tell from the
It's so great.
That was excellent, yeah.
And our newbie to the show.
Hello, I'm Eric, and I'm like homeless Harry Strickland. I showed up late. You don't know who I am, but I might be important.
That's so good. That
You
Eric
win.
did not tell us beforehand. But of course, I should say, as always, we have the Night King over here, just chilling, waiting for the Battle of Winterfell to begin.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
No
That's a
chilling.
twofer.
Stretching.
That's a twofer for me this week. Obviously, a big episode. That being said, not a super surprising episode. I was really into the premiere, kind of setting up everything we needed for the next final 5 episodes of the season, but also kind of hope that they got all that set up out of the way so that the next 5 can be all unexpected delights.
Yeah, it feels like it's a lot of treading water, a lot of setting up, a lot of reunions and scene setting. Considering that we only have 6 episodes, I just wonder if it will end up being too much time wasted by the time we get into everything.
Yeah, when people asked me about it, I said for a first episode of any season, it would be good, better than average, above average. For one part of a 6-part, what is essentially a miniseries, it feels like the camera lingered on some things I'm not sure we needed to see for that long.
I just want to point out, though, this is 6 episodes, but it's like in any normal Game of Thrones season, probably closer to 8, I'd say, with all the extra time that we have in the additional episodes. So I personally was okay with this one kind of being the one that checked off all the boxes we needed to get into the season. The biggest one being Jon, after the big kind of reveal at the end of season 7, officially knows he is Aegon Targaryen.
Right.
What did you guys kind of take away from this scene? What were your initial thoughts?
I loved that his first impression wasn't, oh, I've just banged my aunt. It's like, that's treason. Shame on you for saying that Dany shouldn't be in charge. It's like, all right, dude, that's not quite how I expected that one to go, but I guess it's kind of on brand for him.
Yeah, and I was also a little shook that he accuses Sam, even briefly, of lying. He's like, I swear to God, if you're lying. And it's like, you guys have been through a lot, bro. Like,
I'm not going to punk you on that, man.
yeah, like, that would be a pretty decent prank if Sam was just like, nope, psych, not real, sorry, bad
Sorry
joke.
for freaking you out.
I know we're all, we're about to fight the undead, but, we got to keep the humor
Just wanted
in this
to josh
situation.
you for a second.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that this happened in this episode. So, Laura, first of all, I want to give you credit for pointing out something. I consider myself a really big fan of Game of Thrones.
You are?
But for 7 seasons, full seasons, I never noticed that in the opening credits next to each actor's name, it has the sigil of their character, or some of the creative team actually came up with their own sigils. Eric is
I did
apparently
not know
finding
that.
out for
No.
the first
Where
time
have
as
you guys
well.
been?
When I tweeted about this,
did
a
not
lot of
know
people
that.
also missed it, and other people like my friend.
It's true, they're very tiny, so I get that
I
some
want
people
you to
aren't like
experience-
peering
Listen,
that closely at the screen.
That is me ringing the shame bell for myself that I didn't notice. But this came up in the context of Laura pointing out that in the opening credits for this week, Kit Harington is still a direwolf
Yes.
sigil for the Starks, and I wonder if that
Yeah.
will change next week. So everyone, eagle eye, if you're noticing this for the first time, like we did,
Yeah.
that'll be something to keep an eye out for. But I really do like that they got this out of the way now, so we could get right into what the season seems to be setting up with this question of, is Daenerys the right person to rule, or is Jon? And this kind of goes back to the idea that Game of Thrones continually subverts story expectations, and what is more subversive for the show than saying, hey, we've established for the entire run for 7 seasons, Daenerys is going to be the one true queen of Westeros. She's the one who deserves to be on the Iron Throne. But wait, what if this whole time you've been misled or misreading the signs, and Jon actually should be the person on the throne. What do you think?
Well, it's tough because Jon still also has that archetypal hero's journey like Daenerys has had, right? He comes from nothing, he's learning his destiny. So
Secret king.
Secret king. It is very tropey. So it's like the fact that the show and George R. R. Martin has been building up these two characters, both like, they both have an equal claim to the throne. It makes me wonder if we're going to have another rug pull and someone completely different from both of them will end up on the throne.
Or neither.
And nobody, because everyone's going to die.
Possibly neither, yeah. No, I definitely thought it was an interesting dynamic, and I felt a little silly not having thought of it myself last season when they set all this up of Jon's lineage. It should have occurred to me, if then he has a claim to the throne, which would put him at odds with Daenerys, but we were all just so focused on, everybody's got to band together. They have this threat incoming from the north. I kind of stopped thinking about politics for a second, and I do like that they pushed that forward again as like a secondary storyline.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like we not only get it from Sam literally questioning Jon, like, do you actually think she would have kind of the same reaction you would after he finds out that, his family, his father and brother were killed. Hopefully his mother and sister are still alive and happy. Obviously Sansa as well notes that she might not automatically be the good queen, and I do like, Jon was completely charmed by her and fell in love with her immediately, as so many characters on the show
all the
have.
Dudes. They just all love her.
I'm sure.
She's
Yara,
gorgeous, I get it.
Yara as well.
Yep.
Let's not forget the ladies.
Thirst.
But I just completed a rewatch of the full series, and one thing that frustrated me at the time, but I hope plays out in this kind of challenging of whether Daenerys should be queen, is like how much she botched Meereen. And that's a big part of the books, but in the show, like, everything literally goes to hell.
Yep.
Like, everything is imploding. The Masters have taken back over Yunkai and Astapor and Meereen. The battle's on her door. And all Daenerys can do is, conquer, and she can lead armies, but she has never once exhibited that she could be a good ruler. Jon, on the flip side, obviously got killed by the Night's Watch mutinying, so it's not like he was necessarily a perfect ruler either. But
he may have learned some things from that.
Yeah. Hopefully. And then, of course, I'm putting those next to each other, and Sansa has done the best job ruling, so maybe she'll end up on the Iron
Sansa
Throne.
should. She's been through it, man. She deserves it. Let's just give it to her. She's the one who wanted to be queen. No one else has wanted.
That's true.
Right from back in, the pilot, the first episode. It's like that was her aspiration. And she's actually the one who's been through enough, survived enough BS that she'd actually probably be quite sane about it. I think it's also, because I'm also doing the rewatch, it's interesting to note, kind of going back to Ned kind of beheading the deserter at the beginning of the show, how, the ruler should be the one to swing the sword, the knife, whatever it is. And how Daenerys has never actually done that. You kind of see that with the callback that we get in the beginning of the episode to Dickon and Randall Tarley. It's very easy for someone to be like, oh, my dragons will kill someone. That is a different type of ruling than actually being the one to get your hands dirty. And Daenerys has actually never done that at this point. So
that's an interesting point.
And there's also the whole thing that is a huge part of the books, but they do bring it up obviously in the series, which is that the Targaryen line has a history of madness, and it doesn't always manifest as like just pure craziness, talking to yourself or anything like that. Part of that madness is like this lust for power. So the asking the question, will she give up the crown the way that you did because you thought she had a claim of right? I have some serious doubts about that. I don't think that's in the Targaryen mindset. The Targaryen mindset is not let's share power. The Targaryen mindset is
It's
fire
mine.
and blood.
Yeah.
So,
which is interesting, of course, because Jon is a Targaryen, but raised in the Stark way.
nature versus nurture. What's going to
right.
happen?
I know. I did, Eric, you had a great note about kind of the way that Jon finds out in the crypts. Do you want to get into that a little bit?
yeah, I just one of the main things of the book for me is part of the most relatable part of the character of Jon Snow is this like really deep insecurity that he's always had. It's what caused him to join the Night's Watch. It's what caused him to stay with the Night's Watch even when it was clear that the Winterfell was under siege or had fallen, is that he's never felt like a Stark. And in the books, less so in the show. In the books, that insecurity is always manifested as his knowledge that he'll never be buried in the Winterfell crypts, or he doesn't belong in the family's lore the way that the old kings of the North did. And he has this series of dreams where he's walking in the crypts and he can hear the Starks upstairs having a party, but he knows he's not invited. So I thought it was a really nice hat tip that he's in the crypts when he finally realizes the reason why he's not able to be folded into that Stark lore is because he's not a Stark, which he's known, but he is this other thing that he never would have anticipated. He's a Targaryen, and everything that insecurity is really manifested visually in the crypts, and then also all the implications of like, okay, so what does this mean? I thought that was the highlight of the episode for me.
Yeah, I love it, and I love that perspective on it, and I also do love the way that they framed it. It's like very subtly, you have the statue of Lyanna in the background kind of looking over them, which we know. We'll get into a little bit of the callbacks in this episode from the premiere episode, but we know that, you know, Ned and Robert had that really pivotal scene in front of the Lyanna statue, and then we see that again here. I do want to talk a little bit about, it's funny we're talking about all this aspect of it, but there was a high point as well for the Jon storyline, which is he finally flew a damn dragon. Like, oh my God, what fan service in the best way. My favorite part of that element, though, is he flew Rhaegal, and that's his father, Rhaegar. Like, just very, very sweet. It's important to note that tying it all together, right before this scene, Varys and Tyrion are having that conversation as they see Jon and Daenerys kind of in this young love, and they say that, you know, this will never last. This is our probably our one episode of this happy little love story, but before Jon
goes to hell,
feels like he needs to tell Daenerys about his true parentage. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that high point about him flying a dragon. How did you guys respond to that?
It was very cute. I liked it a lot. I liked that he was terrible at it and almost fell off many, many times,
Right.
like the realistic way to learn to ride a dragon. And I found it interesting that he and Dany kind of land where they land and have this kind of callback, not to the first episode of the show, but obviously kind of a reminiscent to Ygritte.
God,
romantic
can't Ygritte
moment.
just have her cave?
Yeah,
for, like,
Jon needs a new
body
move.
water?
Come on, step it up.
He's like that dude that like has one restaurant and he takes all his Tinder dates there.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, Jon, come on, man, you can.
I saw that. I was like, there had to have been a different waterfall that you could land at for this.
Just forget a waterfall.
Yeah, just go to a
Go
tree.
somewhere else. There's a forest.
Yeah.
You know, let's just switch it up, man.
Yeah, go to like town and take her to a restaurant. You know,
Worked
no.
the one time, so I guess
That's true.
I was
Yeah.
very disappointed in
Yeah.
him on Ygritte's behalf.
It was a little shady. It was
Yeah.
a little. It was not great.
No,
Not
shame
a
on
great
him.
look for Jon.
I am excited about this idea of both of them being able to fly the dragons. Should Dany still allow once she find whatever the aftermath of their inevitable conversation, finding out his true parentage. But I do love the idea of like the Battle of Winterfell that we know is coming, and whatever other battles are to come against the Night King of there being 2 Targaryens on dragons instead of 3, unless the Night King is a secret Targaryen. But I think we all believe that he might be a Stark.
He might be Bran.
I'm just no, never again.
No,
Laura.
I'm sorry.
Bad Laura,
I'm
bad
sorry.
Laura.
He's a different Stark.
Before, different Brandon Stark.
Yeah.
Before we move on from this, knowing that the show might completely subvert our expectations with what comes next, if you had to choose between Dany and Jon as the ultimate ruler, who would you choose coming out of this episode?
I guess Jon, because he doesn't want it as much as Dany does. I would love for Dany's reaction to be like, oh, you know, that's cool, we can both share it. But I don't think that's... the show has subverted things before, so maybe we'll be surprised. But yeah, I think Jon has a bit more of a level head and is less power hungry for it.
I think I'm going to go opposite. I'm going to go Dany. Because I'm still sort of invested in the prophecies of the sort of the dragon and the 3-headed dragon and how that ties into the whole Age of Heroes thing. And I think, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm still trying to process the fact that Jon is also a Targaryen because I keep thinking of it as Stark versus Targaryen when it's not. But I also, Dany has, even though she's not been a very good ruler, her impulse has been not just control, but she's had a really like strong urge to free the slaves, to make sure that society is sort of more equal, even though she's really never gotten that quite right. That's at least been her impulse. So I really respect that about her. And Jon has some of that, but Jon also grew up and believes in this sort of like hierarchical situation. Like he would be the king in King's Landing. He would probably keep society more or less the way it is, whereas Dany really seems to have like a disruptive instinct in her.
She wants to break the wheel.
Exactly. And I relate to that.
Yeah, I think for all that I'm very pro Jon, as I said in last week's Dragons on the Wall episode, which is kind of predictions for the new season, I really firmly believe that Jon is going to die before the end of the season. I think he's back for a reason. And once that reason is completed, it seems to be destroying the Night King. You know, the Lord of Light will decide that kind of his borrowed time has to be given back. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with the one person left standing.
Sansa.
Yeah, Sansa, exactly.
Sansa.
No, Daenerys, I think if I had have to choose the choice that I made, you guys do, and not cheat, even though, you know, I'm the host and I could, if I want to.
You have that power.
Have that power
You could say
for the
Brienne.
future. Yeah. Oh,
Brienne would be
horrible.
great.
No, she'd be horrible, but it would be so lovely. I think that Daenerys, my biggest frustrations with her and why I think she was a poor ruler in the past was she saw the world in black and white, and when it came time to see the world in shades of gray, you know, she went with force instead of diplomacy. But I also think she was living in a world she didn't understand. Like, she didn't understand the slavers in the way that she was raised to understand the Seven Kingdoms. Right. And that is where she's from. So I think she could shake things up in a hopefully positive way. But I could also see things going really
Mad
terribly.
Queen.
And then we could have a sequel series.
Yay!
I would also say that the only reason that Daenerys doesn't have the better claim to the throne is because the laws of Westeros are sexist.
It's
and
true.
She is the older Targaryen, so she should be the queen, except for Westeros doesn't allow women to be monarchs.
I hope that comes up whenever they have their conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like she'd bring that up.
This is crap.
Woke
I think
Game
she
of
would.
Thrones.
Woke Game of Thrones. So we obviously want to know what you guys think. Let us know in the comments. If you had to choose between Jon and Daenerys, who would you choose and why? And if you do have a third option, allow you to give it. So just put it in the comments if you think one of those two would be terrible and you'd pick someone else instead. But I do also want to talk about what was one of my favorite parts of this episode, which were all the pilot callbacks. We knew going into this episode that there were going to be a lot of parallels between the season 8 premiere and the season 1 pilot, and we see them from literally the beginning of the episode to the end of them. So I want to run through kind of the ones that we spotlighted as our favorites, and obviously want to hear from everyone else, any other small ones that we missed upon more rewatches. But let's kind of start at the beginning with the Daenerys and Jon arrival back to Winterfell. We have two key beats kind of from the pilot. We have the boy climbing the tree as our callback to Bran, kind of seeing the procession from afar. And then also, Laura, I believe you pointed out that the little kid pushing through the crowd is very similar to Arya.
Yeah.
And she even has that moment
She
where
clocks it and she's like, oh, and you also even get to see Arya watching the procession again from this new perspective.
Yep.
Like, she was so awed seeing Robert's whole procession the first time, and now it's like Jon and the Hound, and not the Hound, Jon and people she knows. Right. So it's emotional, and I think that it's good that they gave her that kind of beat to be like, oh, Jon before the reunion.
Yes.
But we'll get to that.
We'll get to the reunions later as well.
And I also liked, it's not a direct sort of callback, but it's like an echo of the way that Sansa greets
Daenerys
Khaleesi, when she comes in, is very reminiscent of the way that Catelyn Stark had to welcome Cersei to Winterfell in the first episode too. So I don't know if there's any significance to that, if they're saying that there's a similar dynamic there, but
it was frosty. It was for sure frosty
there
between
was shade.
them.
Yeah, and there obviously was a certain amount of coldness, not between Ned and Robert, which would probably be more similar to Jon and Sansa, but certainly in terms of Ned and Cersei, which would be more similar to Daenerys and Sansa, kind of questioning the new person's motivations for coming there. Yep. But definitely, I mean, there are far fewer Starks now than there were at the beginning of the series, but so wonderful to see them all finally back together in this way, even though we were missing a couple.
And I like that even though it's not from the first episode of the show, Jon greets Bran by kissing him on the forehead, which is exactly how he left him when he went off to take the black while Bran was still in his coma. I thought that was a very sweet moment, even though Bran had pretty much the same reaction he had when Jon kissed him the last time, which was not much.
That's true. And it's just occurring to me now, though, that also in the first episode, Ned says to Jon, the next time I'll see you, I'll tell you about your mother. And Ned is buried in the crypts, and Jon is in the crypts when he finds out about his mother.
And he would have seen his father's statue in the crypt.
His face.
He's standing in front of the statue too, maybe?
Maybe. I mean, he's down there.
He's
probably next to Lyanna somewhere.
Oh, that is beautiful and perfect. So I do, sort of speaking of that, I loved the poetic kind of symmetry of the first time we hear about Lyanna is when Robert and Ned go down there in the first episode, and then of course Jon finds out about his parentage, not only near Ned, but also near his mother's statue. And that kind of has been where a lot of the key conversations around Lyanna have dribbled out over the years, have been down there near her visual representation of in the show. And I really appreciated they had that there. Yeah.
Emotional. Totes emotional.
There are some other ones we picked up on, though. The Jon and Arya, not only reunion, but their needle convo. I know that was a highlight for both of you.
Yes.
It was... I don't know, it was a little patronizing. Jon was like, have you ever had to use it? And it's like, well, you haven't seen her in 10 years. You thought she was dead. She's probably had to use the sword. How do you think she's here?
You thought it was patronizing? I thought it was just naive, which is very Jon.
He still got that image of her as a little kid.
True.
Like, she's been frozen in his mind, probably like Bran has for so many years. And now it's like, oh, God, like, so much time has passed and these kids are grown up. It's the same way we feel, I think, watching it, having seen them grow up.
And if you think about it, too, like, for all that Arya was a wild child, she still was a little lady in Jon's eyes, and he would have never known, seeing her for the first time, even though she's in kind of like these men's clothes, that she has gone on this adventurous journey, typically reserved to little boy adventurers in these types of stories. So I didn't find it, like, super patronizing, but I liked her knowing look.
And
I do want to see how Jon reacts when he sees her fighting.
Yes, that's going to be great. Yeah. But I guess sort of to go back on my own take here, it is sort of an updated version of Stick 'em with the pointy end, which is just sort of like, this is a sword, you don't know how to use it because you're a girl, and now he's just like, well, did you ever figure out how to use it? And I think that was a really nice moment, even though it did come off as a little patronizing to me. But then the look on her face is great because it communicates so much about the amount of time and stuff that's happened between then and now.
Lastly, the big callback that kind of like digs that knife in at the very end of the episode is when Jaime finally makes it to Winterfell and he walks in and Bran's just sitting there in his wheelchair staring at him, which, like, Bran is probably my favorite character, just weirdly. I know it's a weird choice, but I really love Bran. I think he's so compelling. He's like the most fantasy character of all of this, except for maybe Daenerys. But yeah, the depiction of him this season where he's just like this blank slate, I'm not completely loving, but I did find it almost comical when he showed up. But of course, for Jaime, like, this callback, if it goes without saying, is to when Jaime said the things we do for love. That's the end of him, of the premiere with him pushing Bran out the tower, and how shocking for him, this boy he probably has not thought about since the immediate aftermath of that, to still be alive and just wait.
Yeah.
Just wait.
Well, did the Lannisters know that Bran and Rickon were alive
you're
even?
Right.
Or did they think they were burnt by Theon? Did the news ever get to them that Theon was lying about that? I forget.
That is an interesting question.
Because it could be like literally seeing a ghost.
In the books, I'm 90% sure that they think all the Starks are dead. Basically.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure if we have any information on that in the show, though.
Yeah, I'm sure that, again, like, even if Tywin or Cersei or whoever were hearing updates, they might not have made it to Jaime, and if they did, Jaime probably didn't care.
That's true.
But I was sitting next to you, Terry, actually, during the premiere, and when that scene came on, I just hear Terry whispering in the theater, say it to him, say it. And I was like, he didn't say it. And I was like, afterwards, I was like, what did you want him to say? And he's like, the things we do for love. I was like, yeah, that would have been good.
Come on.
Bran's not that cool anymore.
No.
You can't have a comeback.
Just like under your breath, you were like, say it.
I'm like blushing a little bit right now.
Sorry.
No, I remember that I blocked it out because I was so sad that it didn't happen. But like Bran, he did the chaos as a ladder line.
Yeah.
He's like had all these moments, and I really, I just wanted him to say the things we do for love.
Yep.
Because that to me, like, especially from reading the first book and that first episode or something, like the most iconic and like weighty words to say about such a horrible action, and that kind of just motivates the whole series.
It
It's been a nice little button at the end.
Yeah, maybe. There's still time, guys. There are
Right.
5 more episodes. So those are our main ones that we noticed kind of from the pilot or premiere to the pilot to premiere, but there were 2 other ones that we wanted to shout out that weren't callbacks to just this episode, to the season 1 premiere, but to previous episodes. The first being John, like we said, John kind of bringing Dany to a similar location to what he brought Ygritte, which we all were not completely sold about.
No, and Dany's lines were very similar to what Ygritte said. It was like,
Can we stay here forever, or something
like,
along those
we
lines.
can run away and no one will
let's
ever
not go
find
back.
us. Yeah.
And those are not very Dany-like
No,
sentiments
yeah.
either. Yeah, it was kind of strange.
Well, it was forced, just like John trying to get that date to work twice.
Yeah.
And then the other one that we noticed was the very cute Gendry calling Arya "my lady,"
Yep.
which
Love it.
I loved her comeback too, where she's like, "I am the only like noble girl you've ever met."
Yeah.
Or,
You don't
Right.
know any rich girls.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true.
I just
It's a lot of
loved the two
snark in
them.
this episode. I was here for it.
Yeah, I was definitely here for it.
Stark
in-
snark.
Stark snark, the best kind.
In or out of character, all here for it. So those were the ones that we noticed that really jumped out to us. Obviously, if you spotted more, we want to hear them. The more subtle, the better, because I think that's kind of the joy. I'm sure once we get a chance to rewatch this a couple of times, we'll see so much more that we missed. So we want to hear from you. But our last thing that we really wanted to talk about beyond just the callbacks were the reunions that we've been waiting so many years for. I feel like going into season 8, we had a checklist of reunions that we wanted to see, and we got pretty much all of them in this episode. So we each picked our personal favorites of these. We want to hear what yours were as well. So it goes without saying, leave some comments about that. I've been talking a lot though, so Eric, why don't you go first for your favorite? Of the
Sure.
reunions?
Yeah, mine was Tyrion and Sansa. Because they are these 2 sort of characters that are thrown together for a very brief period of time. The time they do spend together is obviously very intense, and then their separation at the wedding is very intense, and that's, in fact, the first thing he brings up is, it was a little tough. You left me in a tough spot there.
A little bit.
To which Sansa responds, well, it wasn't like all wine and cheese for me either. Like, King's Landing it wasn't what I thought it was going to be when I was a girl. But really the thing that struck me is that, like we've talked about, this episode had to do a lot of business in terms of physically locating people in spaces together, but also communicating how their relationships have changed from beginning to end. And Sansa has a really great line toward the end of that reunion where she says, "I used to think you were the cleverest man alive," and Tyrion sort of reacts to that like, "Ooh, I really don't have a comeback to that." And I think that does a really good job of communicating that even at the wedding, Tyrion is the plotter and the schemer and the deviser of all these ingenious plots and stuff. But even at the wedding, that was sort of the moment where she was involved in a plot that he had no idea about. The line, it's Littlefinger that says it, but look around, everyone here is a liar and they're all better than you. Well, that's no longer true anymore. It's very clear that that's not true anymore. It hasn't been true for a while. And Tyrion knows it now. So with that one line, I thought they got a ton of just emotion and information exchanged between these 2 characters. It's like, okay, you know who I am now. You didn't before. So let's just put all that past stuff behind us and focus on what we have to do going forward.
We talked a little bit about this before we recorded this, but that line stuck out to me, but kind of for a different reason. It makes me nervous about Tyrion. He's long been the favorite character on the show for a lot of people, and he, for many seasons, was the cleverest man in the room. But it echoed what Olenna said last season, where she advises Dany. He's a clever man. I've been advised by so many clever men, and what I did was ignored all of them because they're wrong. And he was wrong. He was wrong in Marine with what he tried to do as well. And I don't kind of like this downward arc for Tyrion, where I'm like, no, I want him to stay this clever guy, the guy who's always a step ahead. But really, since he was in King's Landing, he's kind of been like knocked off, off kilter a bit, and hasn't kind of been giving the best advice. And I think I really did appreciate that Sansa called him on what we know to be the truth, which is Cersei sure as hell ain't sending anyone to come help you guys.
Nah, come on, bro.
We see that in our brief time with her this season as well, or in the season premiere. But yeah, that kind of really struck me about that. And I'm like, I hope Tyrion has like a little bit more of an upward journey for him left ahead.
Well, it's also interesting that in Arya and Jon's kind of conversation, Arya points out that she thinks that Sansa is the smartest person she's ever met. She has that line too. So it's really the episode kind of building Sansa up, especially, which I'm fine with.
I'm here for it. Sansa haters to the left.
Yeah.
That was the right. Sansa haters to the left. You're right. Yeah, you get it.
He also seems to continue to believe Cersei when she's talking about the baby. He brings it up again. I can't remember to whom, but he brings it up again that she might have something else to live for. And other people have mentioned, like, if there's anyone you wouldn't want to trust with something like this, it's Cersei Lannister. And if there's anyone who should know that, it's Tyrion Lannister. And he seems to continue to just fixate on, well, she might be telling the truth. So maybe, I don't know, maybe the Lannister line is more important to him than he's let on, or whatever. But I agree with you. The downward sort of him going from the guy who doesn't believe in anybody, doesn't trust in anybody, to maybe being a little too trusting. It's a weird look for him. Are
you still a Cersei is not pregnant truther?
I'm a Cersei is not pregnant truther.
She has the moment though in this episode where she even like it's a private moment for her where Euron's in the background. He's like, I'm gonna put a little prince in you, and she touches her stomach.
Already.
I think she's telling the truth.
I think she's telling the truth. I don't think she'll end up having the baby, but I think
she's gonna die in childbirth. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
I forget if I said that last episode or not. But that's my new prediction.
Way harsh, Ty. Way harsh.
That's rough.
Yeah. But I don't think she has a reason to lie necessarily. And remember when Tyrion kind of questions her on "you're pregnant," the camera cut away from that scene, so we don't actually know how the end of that conversation went.
True.
But I don't think she has a particular reason to lie about that right now. Maybe later, maybe once she does lose it, if she doesn't die in childbirth, it would be something that she would want to keep going to kind of protect herself. But
interesting.
For now, I think she preggers.
That's a plot line for another day. And getting away from our reunion theme. So let's continue on that line of thought. Laura, what was your favorite reunion?
Arya and Jon. I've been waiting for it for so long.
We let her take that one for the record.
We all love that one. It's all our favorites. How can you not?
You got it, though.
I got it. I called dibs. It's just so beautiful. And as we kind of said, the callbacks to the first episode with Needle, seeing how much she's grown, how Jon has completely, he has this picture of her that, he's had in his mind for however many years. I love that she actually calls him on dying, and he's like, well, I didn't survive getting stabbed in the heart. And they've just both been through so much, and they're both such different characters now from when they were those cute little kids in the first episode, that it was just so satisfying. I definitely shed a tear or two watching it.
I love that you can tell that's the moment that Arya has been waiting for this whole time. Like, of all her siblings, Jon is...
screw Sansa. I didn't want to see her. I want to see Jon.
Well, I mean, really, like, he was the one who got her, more than anyone else in the family. And as part of the rewatch, I watched the scene with the waif where she's like, I have however many siblings, and she gets hit, and she's like, I have a half-brother. But, for her, Jon was her sibling. And, you recently even talked to Maisie Williams, who said, like, that's the moment that Arya's been waiting for over the season.
Gendry who was what she said.
But that's actually, we're jumping ahead because that's going to be my pick for reunion. But in terms of Jon and Arya, it was everything I could have hoped for. Maybe too fan servicey in that way, but everything.
But I think prickly enough that it didn't feel super fan servicey. Like, we got the hug, we got the moment that we wanted, but you can sense the history and the trauma that they've both been through. Yeah,
and I think, like we've talked about, like this, if you're gonna do it, and if you're gonna get a little too sweet, this is the episode to do it.
Yep.
Get it all out, get your reunions in, get the cute dialogue back and forth in, and then let's start killing people.
Yeah. Before I get to my pick, I am curious because Laura brought up she cried at that moment. Did you shed any tears in the premiere?
I'm not much of a crier.
Yeah, but still.
In general.
But still.
Let's see. Did I shed any tears during the premiere? I did not. I have to be honest.
We were sitting next to each other. There was. So this is like a humble brag moment we save until the end of the episode. But we actually, all three of us, were lucky enough to see this at the premiere in New York City for season 8, which was like crazy. It was in Radio City Music Hall, and it was like this massive screen, and it was just surreal. The Jon Arya scene didn't make me go. But the scene where Arya saw a dragon for the first time, which coincidentally is like in the trailers, right? But that moment, I just got like so overcome with happy tears, where I was like, she's wanted this for so long, and it must be so crazy after all this journey, like for her to have this, actually see a damn dragon. Like I felt very caught up with the character in that moment, and Eric was sitting next to me, and I was like, just let the tears go, and then the scene will pass, and then you can like quietly like make him think you're cool and you don't cry either. But
no, I mean I thought maybe
it was a good moment.
Yeah, it was a great moment.
It was a good moment, even with the tease in the trailer. Okay, we're going on a while, so I'll wrap up with my favorite, which I did take before you took Jon and Arya, knowing you would take that one. But my favorite was the Arya and Gendry moment, mostly because it has the biggest what does this mean moment in the whole episode for me, when she kind of hands him the weapon and is like, make it. And I'm like, I want to pour over this moment so much. I want to get a close up on what that weapon could be. What does she need to have made with this dragon class? But yeah, those two are so cute. And like once the show started going the certain direction, it's clearly going with fan service and cool moments like that. I was like, I don't know. I feel like they're going to play into the Arya Gendry shipping we've had for years in a way that the books probably won't.
Until they kill him horribly or kill her horribly or kill both of them horribly.
But to me, they kind of had that flirtatious moment in this episode that I would want to have a payoff for, in the same way that Jaime and Brienne and when they had their reunion back at River Run had that similar moment there. So I loved it. And then I loved that it got the bonus of also having her reunite with the Hound right before.
I was going to say.
Oh, so good.
That was going to be my honorable mention.
Yeah.
Just for the line, you left me to die, and she just looks at him and goes, well, I robbed you first. That was probably the best line of the...
Stark snark.
Yeah, Stark snark again.
Yeah.
Love it.
Listen, Arya is out of F's to give after all.
Yes.
No, man.
Deservedly so.
But, well, we got all those. I guess we haven't had another Jaime and Brienne reunion. And did we have a Brienne and Hound reunion? Did they acknowledge that they're
I think they did last season, right?
Yes.
Oh, you're right.
In
the
Dragon
Pits.
Exactly. So I think, we've pretty much finished off our checklist for reunions, and now I'm kind of expecting next episode to just kill off everyone right
Apart
from the
from
start.
Clegane Bowl.
Well, yeah.
We'll
see.
We'll see.
Listen, Maester Hypemon says that it's coming.
It's coming.
And I have faith. It's confirmed. Just kidding. That's my favorite YouTube video for all things Game of Thrones. And if you haven't seen the Clegane Bowl hype video, that's my plug to some random internet person's amazing, ridiculous video that makes me cry laugh every time I watch it. And with that, that's our episode of Dragons on the Wall this week. We, of course, will be back next week to serve all of your Game of Thrones needs, break down whatever the heck is going to happen next, because we really can't predict where this thing is going. Want to give Laura a plug. She is going to be reviewing each episode this season. If you're watching this on IGN.com, you can probably see her review right down below us.
Read it down there somewhere.
On YouTube or listening to it on a podcast, come to IGN and listen or read Laura's amazing review.
Don't be too mean to me in the comments.
Don't be mean in the comments, but we're curious to think what you think of the overall episode after you read that. Also, we have a really cool new initiative. If Dragons on the Wall is not enough for you and you want to be watching this with us live, well, we've got you covered for all 6 episodes of this final season. We are going to be having live pre and post Game of Thrones episodes airing watch parties across all of our channels. So you can come to IGN.com, IGN YouTube, IGN Facebook, IGN Twitter, and you can watch along with us. It'll be myself and Sydney Goodman, one of our hosts, and some special guests as well, where we're going to be giving all our predictions and then, of course, breaking down the episodes live. So we want you to, of course, continue to be listening to Dragons on the Wall. But if you want a little bit more Game of Thrones fun in your life, that's a really good good option too. And then, of course, we got to wait a whole week until next week's Game of Thrones. So we have some more plugs for you guys if you want to watch some fun initiatives we've had going on. We have a whole really cool series called When I Died on Game of Thrones, where we went back and talked to a bunch of former cast members who died in really, really memorable, horrible, and tragic ways. So you can check out all those. I think we have, 15 total that we've rolled out.
Yeah.
We've talked to
So many dead people. So many.
People.
Lots of dead
Everyone
people.
from
All the dead people.
Robert Baratheon to Littlefinger we've talked to, so we definitely want you to check those out. And I plugged it a little bit earlier in the episode, but we have a really fun video where Maisie Williams, aka Arya Stark, and Sophie Turner, aka Sansa Stark, interview each other, and it's just a damn delight. So please check those out. That's it for us this week on Dragons on the Wall, but IGN will have you covered for all your Game of Thrones needs. So wherever you like to watch IGN, be sure to follow and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Bye.